I'm Ed Bo, and welcome to my latest edition of Ed Reviews. Today we are going to be reviewing Marvel Netflix's Luke Cage. Luke Cage was a character created by Marvel Comics in the 70s by legendary Marvel writer Archie Goodwin, legendary Marvel artist John Romita Sr. John Romita Sr. is the father of John Romita Jr., who is the artist on the comic book version of Kick-Ass and Kick-Ass 2. Um, among other things. And also created by a Marvel talent called George Tuska, whom I don't know, but if he worked on Luke Cage, he's a legend in my book. This is a Marvel Netflix series, and this was a comic book that was originally created based upon blaxploitation comic books, and it had some of the success of blaxploitation, but it also had some of the pitfalls of, well, what happens when you try to write blaxploitation and you're not black. We'll get into that later. This is set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, aka the MCU, but it is the Netflix side of the MCU, which is darker, grittier, and everything that the DC universe, movie universe, is trying to be, and in my personal opinion, failing. Um, it stars Michael Coulter as Luke Cage. You'll remember Michael Coulter as Luke Cage in Jessica Jones, and he's just as good, if not better, here than he was as a supporting character in that show. It also stars Alfre Woodard as Black Mariah, who is a character who, in the comic books, well, she was the epitome of the blaxploitation character written by white people. She was a living stereotype, and the Luke Cage television show cleans that up quite a bit. And she's an interesting character, very well acted. It also stars Mahershala Ali, I think that's how you pronounce the dude's name, as Cottonmouth, a minor Marvel villain who in here is a major villain in this show. It also stars, what's the woman's name? The woman's name is Simone Missick, I think her name is, as Misty Knight, who is a very popular Marvel character. Also, she's very blaxploitation inspired, but she's also a character that, like Luke Cage, has risen quite a bit above those origins, and she is a great character both in the comic books and in this television show. So, in the beginning picks up after 2 seasons of Daredevil and one season of Jessica Jones. We have Luke Cage, who is now in hiding in Harlem, trying to stay off the radar, off the grid, and out of everyone else's way. He is the typical hardworking black man. He's working 2 jobs, at least. That's as far as we get in the show. And he's just trying to survive. However, he's a dude with superpowers and thus super responsibilities, according to Spider-Man. And he's a dude that lives in a crime-depressed neighborhood, a crime-depressed section of New York City. And he can't stay out of it. He can't stay out of it and be a morally conscious person. So the beginning is how he gets drawn into the intrigue that is the bulk of the show. The middle, which is where most of the action takes place, and it's very much what you want. There's a lot of action, there's a lot of drama, much more drama than you might expect given the origins of the comic book, which is much more action oriented. This is typical Marvel Netflix, where it is very, very heavy on character development and story development, and in this case, very heavy on setting. This is a television show about Harlem. It's about a superhero infested version of Harlem, but it's still Harlem. This is a very, very black show. It is not really meant only for black people, but it is a show that black people can call their own. And wow, is it good. The ending is the weakest part of the whole thing. It's not very weak, but it is weaker than Act 1 and Act 2. Mainly because one of the villains is a little more cartoonish than he needs to be, and it's sort of like the actor didn't get the memo that everyone else was taking this thing just like bone dry serious, and he comes off as a Marvel villain from, say, early on in the Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2 days. Um, he's not bad per se, but he is much more cartoonish than everything else around him, and that is a bit of a weak spot. Um, the upside. The upside, this show is incredibly well acted, incredibly well cast. It has an amazing score and soundtrack that you will want after you watch this show. It has great action and a great story, and it's mostly well paced, except for a little bit at the end where it gets weird. The downside is that end where it gets weird. The downside is that one villain who is much more cartoony and just doesn't fit into the rest of the show. He's tied into the storyline fairly well, but he's just too cartoony for this show. The question is 5 stars or 4.5. There's a slight pull because of the weakness at the end of the show is glaring, but it's not that much of a weakness. It's not unenjoyable. Slightly off, but it's not unenjoyable. In the end, this show is so good, I personally have to give it 5 stars. Luke Cage is an amazing show on Netflix, which you should check out as soon as possible. And if you've already checked it out, watch it again. So 5 stars, Luke Cage. Thanks for watching.